Hey everybody, Josh Searton, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Snyson, and we have a bit of a told you so moment here today because we went into the Fight for 15 not that long ago and talked about how the minimum wage actually causes more unemployment, it causes inflation in the price of living. It causes, you could raise the minimum wage in 1 second to, $10,000 an hour. And what you'll actually end up seeing out of that is that all the prices will go up. So $10,000 an hour is equal to that of the original wage and the minimum wage. And I think what we're seeing right now in Seattle is incredible because when we did this report not that long ago, I think it was about a month ago, one of the most common comments we saw was, well, look at how Seattle's doing. The minimum wage in Seattle is doing great. Well, not so much because we have the study, we have the paperwork to show it now. Of course, Seattle is the fastest growing city in the United States per capita when it comes to population. And there are a lot of problems that plague the area, especially in the housing market. We've reported on that before, and there's a lot of bubbles forming. And now this does not help at all, folks. So let's go into this study. And it was put out by the Foundation for Economic Education, and we'll go into the impact right now. So they initially raised it to $11 an hour. They didn't have a whole lot of information to really go on there. So when people were saying that the minimum wage rise was actually effective in Seattle, they actually did that with zero information to prove it. They just saw, well, fire isn't raining down from the sky yet, so it's all good. Well, let's look into the $13 an hour raise now. As it says, the policy is an unmitigated disaster. The main findings: the number of hours worked by low-wage workers fell by 3.5 million hours per quarter. This was reflected both in thousands of job losses and reductions in hours worked by those who retained their jobs. The losses were so dramatic that this increase reduced income paid to low-wage employees of a single location Seattle businesses by roughly $120 million on an annual basis. On average, low-wage workers lost $125 per month, which is something that low-wage workers really truly need. Now, moving on, estimates of the response of labor demand are substantially higher than much of the previous research, which may have been expected given how much higher and how localized this minimum wage is relative to previously studied ones. The impacts took some time to be reflected in the level of employment as predicted by Mir and West. The paper not only makes numerous valuable contributions to the economics literature, but should give serious pause to minimum wage advocates. Of course, that's not what's happening, to the extent that the mayor of Seattle commissioned another study by an advocacy group at Berkeley, whose previous work on the minimum wage is so consistently one-sided that you can set your watch by it, that unsurprisingly finds no effect. Of course, there is effect, though, and this is what we'll quickly go into. So as we reported before here at WAM, when you raise that minimum wage, what you're causing is a massive disruption and manipulation of the markets by the hand of the state. So you raise that minimum wage and you cause the prices to go up and the price of living to go up because, of course, not only do the businesses have to pay their employees more, but they have to raise the prices so that...
in order to actually make a profit.
Yeah, to make the profit and to benefit their shareholders as well, which is free market, fair competition. That's the right thing to do. You have to benefit your shareholders because if you don't, then you're not running a company very well and you'll see it crash into the ground.
Well, not even shareholders. If you're just running a mom and pop store, if your bottom line gets fucked.
That's what I wanted to get into was the small businesses. So people on the left often talk about how they want to stop these major monopolies, these massive corporations, and they want to regulate them and tax them into the ground. But in reality, these regulations shove the small businesses out of the market. They force these small businesses to be incapable of competing and innovating. And when you talk about, well, McDonald's can afford to pay more, Yes, McDonald's can. That's why they are supporting this. That's why Walmart is supporting the $15 minimum
And they're
wage.
getting subsidized by food stamps as well. These big
Exactly.
corporations, so they
But
don't care.
those that can't afford to do it are the small businesses. And you speak out against these monopolies. Do you really care about the monopolies, or do you just want to emotionally throw points forward without any logical evidence or backing, and just say, well, it feels good to say free stuff. It feels good to say higher wages. Look into the basic market principles, the basic economics of this, and it's insane what it actually does. It forces people into further poverty. It forces automation of jobs, which is no coincidence, by the way. And we continue to see a technocratic buildup while the poor and most in poverty are shoved into the ditch. And that $15 will be worth just as much as that $11 before it. I mean, this is just where people completely lose the economic ground.
Yeah, it totally is. People are falling out of the system because of this minimum wage hikes, and what we're gonna see here in Canada is the exact same thing. There's gonna be no difference if you're in Canada or wherever you are. The minimum wage hike is gonna be worse, and then of course, if we're talking about hiking the minimum wage to a more substantial level, what the problem is then, if you don't change the tax code, you're gonna get taxed more, and then that hike that you got is gonna have minimal impact in that way as well. On top of everything getting more expensive because you have to pay more because the businesses has to raise their prices for their products and commodities that they sell.
Absolutely, and it's kind of like that carbon tax. It's a tax on everything because it affects the pricing of everything. So, let's say you make $11 an hour, and you're not too happy with it because it's not a whole lot, and rightly so. It isn't a whole lot, and because of the monetary system manipulating the price of money, the price of currency, that's a whole other story. But that causes the rate of products to go up in value. But also at the same time, say you make $11 an hour, and you want to get that loaf of bread. Now, let's say that we raise that wage to $15 an hour. Now the company that makes the bread has to raise their wage to $15 an hour. And what that causes is that price for that bread goes up at the same rate, if not more.
Because if don't, they're gonna lose a substantial amount of profits.
Yeah, and they're going to see much more unemployment because of that. So, not to mention the unemployment that they see happening with the minimum wage hike, but it also lead to later unemployment if they don't raise those prices. That's not greed. That's simply individuals trying to take care of their company so they can provide for the employees of that company. But you raise that wage, and it causes the price of the bread to go up. So that person who was making $11 an hour, who was buying that bread, is now making $15 an hour and is buying that bread at the same value. Just because the numbers go up doesn't mean the value goes up. And I think one of the things that this really hits hard on is the fact that people who've been working for years to get a higher wage and get raises, they stay at the same rate while that minimum wage goes up. Mm-hmm. So that new employees are making almost the same wage as them, and they end up seeing that inflation rate go up, and they see their value go way down, so they're actually getting a downgrade because of it, which isn't fair.
No, of course they are. Love or hate Peter Schiff, but he actually, I don't know, yeah, we have our thoughts about Peter Schiff, but he actually did a great video where he went out to Walmart and asked people, are you willing to pay more for your products? And then they say, no, well, do you support minimum wage hike? And it's like, yes, well...
Yeah. Well, and again, Walmart and McDonald's and these massive corporations support the minimum wage hike because it pushes more people into their hands and puts more money in their wallets because they are able to rise above and cut out even further competition to monopolize and conglomerate even further. I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand. We need to start educating people better because obviously people have a profound misunderstanding of what wages are, what money is, what value is, what inflation is, what these businesses have to do to keep running. Yeah, employment. And I mean, I really think that we need to continue to educate people further about this, because people too often ask for things and don't ask what they can do for themselves. And this is a huge problem that we're seeing emulate even further and further throughout society today.
Yeah, well, we've been put in that system through the school system, right? We talked about that with Hollis Swanson just recently, and Alex Newman and others.
Mm-hmm.
It's that system that makes us dependent on the government, so they
Yeah.
can, come up with their welfare programs. And then at one point, you will see like Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal. They would just come and the UK. They would come in and say, "Oh, we gotta have austerity now. All the money that we promised you, we don't have it. We're gonna have to, And then they make you a complete slave to the government.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm, because what they're doing is they're really trying to take control over you. It's a scam, folks. It sounds good, I understand, but you have to look further than your first glance. You have to look further than your gut instinct when you first hear it on TV and hear some liberal commentator saying, "Well, we need this to help the poor." It's not helping the poor. The government loves people on welfare. The government loves people dependent, and I'm not talking about people who can't work. I'm not talking about the people that are disabled. I'm talking about the people that are perfectly capable of working. They love to push those people into welfare. They love to push people into debt through debt servitude, through the monetary system and through the markets. And this is just part of their plan, their agenda, in order to enslave everyone into that debt servitude that we talk about so often here at WHAM.
Yeah, well, there's not 48 million people in the U.S. that's completely disabled or mentally challenged.
No.
Not at all. So there's so many people that could just go out and search for work.
Absolutely. And I think we'll leave it at that for the bottom line, because I think that it's really important that people understand the market principles, the basic economics of this, and then just understand personal responsibility. You can't have liberty without personal responsibility, and liberty is the basis of all life. The only person that you can have control over in this world is yourself. And without that, what's the point? Then you lose the very basis of life itself. So thanks, John, for going into this with us, and we'll be back at you with much more. Check the links below, GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube. Also, check our address for Bitcoin in the descriptions and the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also find me at Josh Sayertson and John at The Economic Truth on Steemit. That's steemit.com, and it's the future of social media. It's cutting out all these dinosaur social medias that are censoring us to death, where you get paid in cryptocurrency to blog. So I really hope you join us on there. But until next time, this is Josh Sayertson and John Snyson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.